Hi, Jess. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we're excited to have you. Can't wait for you to share with the listeners what you've been up to and everything that you're kind of offering your clients, which I think could definitely share as inspiration for our listeners. What we'll do to get started is if you could share with everybody what you're currently doing as far as your current practice, what you're doing in your day-to-day currently, and then we'll kind of back it up a little bit and talk about what you previously were doing.
Okay, so right now I work as Jess Kirby Youth Element, and I'm kind of just building up my business while my kids are little. I work 16 hours a week while they're in school and care. And then I'm dealing with people kind of in their late 20s to probably like 45, 50, male and female, just on aging well. And the people that I deal with now are generally coming to me with just starting to get little symptoms of something. And a lot of it sometimes is like food sensitivities or hormones, or after kids, things aren't quite going well, or trying to get pregnant. And they're just noticing things just aren't quite getting there the way that they thought they would. Or stress is really high. That's another one. And they don't know how to manage stress. It's just something they've never thought of. And so although I deal with aging well, and I'm trying to narrow this niche down to something more specific, but it kind of encompasses just everything we learn in IHP, really. And it's really about getting foundations into place and getting them in at an early age, really, because we actually start aging, late 20s, early 30s. The process is happening, whether you feel it, when you're 45, 50, 60. It's happening when you're young. And so my goal is just to let people kind of ease into these things. Like we're all going to do it. And it's not about not having wrinkles or gray hair or anything like that. It's just, if we can go through, menopause a little bit easier, if we can get pregnant and have healthy babies and know how to make this next generation more conscious and just be able to move our bodies all the time and stay interested, stay on purpose, and control stress, just having people find ways to do that and think about it. And because these are things that carry you all the way through, right? And the earlier you learn them, the more tools you have in your box just to carry them through until the end of your days. So this process can be enjoyable and not something that we dread.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I think, the stress component and, whether it be hormones getting out of balance, everybody kind of waits until there's this alarm and, things have already gone wrong. But I think it sounds like your approach is to kind of, let's make sure you don't get there. And we don't have this like huge spill to clean up. Let's make sure that we don't fill the cup too much. And then if it tips over, there's this huge mess, there's maybe just a little water on the floor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I actually had my first client come to me and she's like, I actually feel really good. I just want to, check in and get started. I was like, yes, this is it. You are the person that we need more of this, right? Because you're probably not great and you probably don't have great systems in place. And maybe you do, but let's just get that going now so that you can continue feeling this way.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And I can't tell you how many clients I usually have that, will come to me and they'll say, they'll talk about what they're going through. And then at the end, they'll be like, but I am in my mid 50s. So It's just, and you're mid 50s. Well, you're not dead and you're not 50, you're not 85, you're just 55. And so I know that our society, I think, takes age and they kind of use that as this excuse or this norm for just having all these systematic breakdowns that don't necessarily need to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, honestly, I can remember the moment when my grandma turned 40 and she had gray hair and I thought, oh my God, 40 is so old. And I would have been only 10 or so, right? And then I think we are getting better because it's now like my parents turn 60 or 65, they're and then they feel the same as what 40 did a little while ago.
Yes.
And so I think we're starting to get a little bit better, and like 40 is young now. Like I see 40 as, maybe that's because the age bracket I'm getting into, but things can just be starting when you're 40, like.
Yes. Yeah. Women having their first kids when they're 40.
Absolutely. Yeah. Getting your career on the go, it's, for me, it's a beginning, and I plan on working. I don't see a day, for me, I don't want to retire or anything like that. I just want to keep feeling as good as I can and just keep going and helping and spreading and educating. And
Yes. And that I think comes, with doing something you love too, right? Like people that are
definitely
doing these grind jobs that like they're looking forward to their retirement. They're looking forward to the end of their misery. Whereas if you're doing something you love, it's kind of like, well, I'm just going to keep doing this because I love it.
Yeah. Very lucky to find something like that.
That's great. So to that point, let's kind of back things up a little bit. How did you originally get started kind of in thinking that this might be a space you wanted to, work in, help people? Have you always been health-minded? What was your kind of journey to this point?
So I definitely grew up with I grew up in Canada with no, health was not on the radar at all. I grew up standard American diet, like most people. And it wasn't until I traveled Australia when I was 19 years old. And I came back to Canada, and I realized I had really changed a lot in that year. And I met an Australian guy in Canada and basically moved over there. And that was the real change. I could say I was living by the beach. And so that lifestyle really encompassed a different way of living than I had been my whole life in Canada. So, we lived a lot of the year in a bikini, outside, and just the heat makes you want to eat differently and move your body more. And, there's such a huge factor of different lifestyle when there's sunshine all the time. Mm-hmm. And so that was really what started my interest in it. And then I kind of aligned that with companies that I worked with. I worked for an organic makeup company that didn't have any of the fillers and the phthalates and the oxides, all of that stuff. And I trained for them around Australia. And I worked as a makeup artist, selling to spas and stuff, a healthier skin component. And then I actually, when I stopped that, so we got married in 2012, and I was one of those people that just would have been happy if I was pregnant at my wedding. Like it was game on, mm-hmm. And it didn't happen for me like that. And so I really, then it started like kind of getting more specific, I guess, into the fertility realm. And I started actually working for a company called Swiss Vitamins, thinking that it was aligning with where I needed to go, and I would find out stuff about my health and all this stuff. And I had also started studying with IIN. And it was a very quick learning that one. I think I was at that job for 3 months, and I was like, nope, this is definitely not where I wanted to go. It was not supplement health related. It was very much sales and get these into pharmacies and get, your banners up. And so it was a quick shift for me. And I went and I was feeling a bit lost actually. And I went into Lululemon, and I was actually just after like a job for the Christmas period, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I ended up talking to the manager, and she was leaving, and I started working at Lululemon as the store manager, which I was really excited about, because I wanted to be with people that were more aligned to the way of life I wanted to live. And I definitely found that at Lululemon, and mostly all of my best friends still to this day are from there. And that was 10 years ago. So that kept me in the space, and I studied at IIN, and I learned a few things about nutrition, and I changed some of my ways there as I learned. And I also, it was the first time I really connected with my body in a space of like my cycle. And when I'm ovulating, I had been on the pill since I was 14 years old. I went on it because I was starting to have my cycle and my skin was getting bad and I had cramps and I played a lot of sports and it was stopping me from playing sports. And the doctor's advice was just go on the pill. And my mom, that was what everybody was doing, right? She didn't know any different, and you just trust your doctor. And so I had been on the pill from 14 to now I was 28. And I came off just before our wedding. And so I didn't get my period back for 2 years. And wow. So, yeah. And that, I was not expecting that, you know, like I was told it would come back in like max 3 months. And so I just started going down the rabbit hole. I started seeing so many doctors and then eventually went to, it just didn't feel right. I wasn't getting what I wanted from that. And so I started seeing naturopaths and acupuncturists. And there's two really clear moments in my life where I was sitting with my naturopath and she was very focused on fertility. And she was just talking to me and I was like, where did you go to school? I want to do this. I want to know I want to be able to help people in this way. First help me, but then I want to be able to help people if this works. And you know, her methods were like so simple. At the time I was vegetarian. And she was like, you're low on iron. And I got some genetic testing. I had MTHFR. My job was, I wouldn't say it was stressful, but I had like 15 employees and I was probably working 60-hour weeks. So it was just a lot, right? And it never really stopped. So there was stress there. And there was just the stress of not being able even to get my period back, leave alone get pregnant. Mm-hmm. And so we found these few things out and it was just like, you need to eat good grass-fed meat once a week. You need to start grounding, just walk in the sand. You have all this beach, like just walk barefoot every day. You know, maybe don't work out twice a day. Maybe just bring it down to one and put some boundaries around your work. You know, you have an assistant, just get her to take on a little bit more and get your team to take on more, you know, and it was just things like that I wouldn't even have thought of. Mm-hmm. And
I think some women in that scenario think like, how's this going to, grounding or getting you see this big problem of fertility and you're like, these little simple things are going to actually help with this big problem. You know, we get big problem focused and we think our solution needs to be big too.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case. Yeah.
Yeah. I find that often actually. Yeah. And you know, I would even get bothered sometimes to the point of where I just stopped telling people what we were doing about it because they're like, oh, you have to go take your walk on the beach. You know, I was like, I know it's great, but like, I do feel my stress levels like coming down. Right. And with a combination of it all, like it all has to work together. It's never going to be the one thing. Right. And I continued to go to acupuncture and I continued to go to my naturopath and support my deficiencies. And, you know, it was everything at once. And then the second moment I was training with somebody who I don't know, maybe you might know or not. His name's Dan Churchill, and he used to be our ambassador at Lululemon. He now he won MasterChef and now owns a cafe in New York. But for health-focused people and athletes, his cafe caters to that. So, and I remember we were talking about smoothies and we were talking about nutrition in them. And I was doing like a cleanse at the moment. And it was actually like a smoothie and juice cleanse. And I thought, I don't know if this is it. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing right now, but there's something in detox that I just love. Like there's something in just cleaning out the body, ridding it of toxins that I think is just so valuable and needed in this world. And I just remember that moment. I remember where we were sitting. I remember everything about it. And I was like, this is going to be in my future. here we are today, again, 10 years later. Yeah, and so I continued working at Lululemon until I had my first baby, which was almost 3 years later. It was actually within 3 months of seeing that naturopath, though. So that work took 3 months to change around, which was incredible.
Wow.
But I also learned so much. Like, I don't think women learn about how to, that you only ovulate for 3 or 4 days. You can't actually get pregnant every day of the month. And, there was just so many things in that we don't learn, it really, a lot of the time until this point in our life. So
you
from
spent
there,
so much time not trying to get.
I'm like, I wasn't on the pill because I was sexually active in the beginning, but like eventually I'm like, God, I could have just avoided this thing the whole entire time if I would have known how to track my cycle, and I wouldn't have needed all these fake hormones in my body.
Yes. Yeah. But most of our early 20s, teens, like you spend all that time trying not to get pregnant.
Absolutely.
But yes. So it's interesting. Yeah. So go ahead. Sorry.
And then I took a break we had our first baby, and I ended up going back to work at a chiropractic clinic, very part-time. And again, just like to keep in my field and keep with people that were relatable. Community is really important to me, and feeling, because when you think this way, you're not mainstream, right? And so you can feel a little bit out of the cool kids for a while, like I just want to be around people that are into the same wave. And then we actually moved back to Canada in 2017. And I had my second, I was 7 months pregnant when we moved with my second, which happened naturally, very easily, no problem. So I thought I was on a really good streak there. But, I'd only stopped breastfeeding 2 months prior to that. And my body was depleted. My baby fed every 2 hours for 22 months. Almost, and then I got pregnant right away. And then we had an international move. My husband started a new company. That's why we did it. We're kind of just people who see an opportunity, see a life that we want, and we just try and grab it by the horns, really. We had this move. We sold all of our belongings. I had a toddler. I was 7 months pregnant. We had a new company. I had no community moving here, and I had to get everything for a new house basically in one go with a wild little guy on my side. So stress was high, and I ended up, my baby was breech through my whole pregnancy. And so I spent the last, from the time we got here, the last 3 months, upside down. Literally, I have so many photos of me just downward dog and laying backwards down the stairs. And I was like, this baby will flip. This will work. It didn't work. I had to get a C-section, which I'm very squirmy with needles and everything. So it was my absolute worst scenario. And it did something to me that I physically left my body, and I did in a natural birth as well, but in the C-section, it was from fear. Mm-hmm. And I never really landed back in. That winter, it snowed in August that year that we moved here. We'd only been here for a couple months, and I hadn't had snow for the last 13 years of my life. And I had this fresh baby, again, no friends, no anything. And I got seasonal affective disorder. I got postnatal depression. I ended up just with complete burnout, and I got Hashimoto's. My child had I don't know if we can say it on here, but a V injury. And that just created so much stress. And then I I knew Melissa Ambrosini from when I lived in Australia. And so I followed her. It's funny, before we both got into, she used to spray tan me.
Oh, that's funny.
Definitely before we got into the health field. But so I followed her on Instagram, and she mentioned this podcast, and I got listening to it every day, and every day it would come out, I would listen. And I was really struggling at this point. Like, I was struggling to get out of bed. I was struggling as a mom. I didn't know what to do with my child, who was like breaking out in the full body rash. Like, we couldn't even dress him because he was bleeding and passing everywhere. And my brain fog was so crazy. And I would be making notes in my book on every podcast I listened to. And I've heard a few IHPs, this is how they started, was from the podcast. Mm-hmm. So that it's a powerful podcast. But yeah, and then I think it was 6 months of that, and I had listened to every single episode, and he announced that he was starting a course, and I had been looking for a course at this time, but I knew I didn't want another one like IIN. I had learned nutrition from that, and that was good, but it only gets you so far. And I needed something more rounded. I needed something bigger. I knew the help that I needed was bigger than what diet alone could do. And going forward, I wanted to be able to give that to people and have that difference. And so I jumped into the first IHP group that there was. It was funny, actually, because I wanted this so bad. I thought everybody else wanted it so bad. And I was like, the minute it opened, I was like on my computer, and like, I was sweating, and I need to get into this course. Like, this course will save my life. And sure enough, it did. So wow. I managed to heal myself and heal my baby. And now I'm working on my parents. That's very slow, but I've helped my sister, and now I get to help lots of clients, and it's incredible. Yes. I'm so happy.
Yeah. And it's such a story that kind of, we think about maybe obstacles, and it sounds like, some of your obstacles were, your international move and mm-hmm. a birth that just wasn't aligned with what you wanted. And there was so many, but the truth is a lot of those things likely got you to the place of like baby desperation, sitting at your computer, sweating, trying to sign up for a program, right? Like sometimes with the only way that we can go up is if we hit the bottom, in some instances. And that is what then, takes us and projects us into like the best future possible. And we can kind of look back. I talk to so many young people, now that like you can't see it when you're in it, but oftentimes like your struggles can honestly be like the greatest blessing. And you just kind of have to trust that you're where you're supposed to be at any given moment in time.
I wholeheartedly believe that. I actually just did an Instagram post on that the other day, and I see friends in their moment of struggle, and I'm like, this is meant to be happening. I promise you, it's not here to harm you. It's here to teach you. You will learn from this. You will grow from this. Just know that it's meant to be happening to you, and you can't see it. Of course you can't see it when you're in it. I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. Like but yeah, it's in hindsight, you can see it, the progression and how it leads you to, what you're meant to be doing.
Of course. Yeah. So let's because I think it would be really nice for the listeners to hear. We'll go back to kind of present day. Mm-hmm. What you believe, what's your kind of biggest focus in this, and it sounds like it's, yes, maybe anti-aging. We kind of use that term, but almost more like this is just gracefully aging. And it doesn't have to be this painful process where like you deal with joint aches and, you have to deal with your hair gray, getting prematurely gray. So in your kind of graceful aging approach, what are the things that you find most important kind of across the board? What's your general approach with these clients?
So I feel like people come to me interested in aging well, but in a way of like, well, they're not sure if they want to get Botox, but they're like at a point where they like might get it, and they don't want to have gray hair. And how do I not have gray hair? And it's like, it's actually not about any of that. And it's just how to ease your body into this and keep things well for as long as possible. Mm-hmm. And so I find that we just have to, insulin is a huge indicator of our overall wellness. And so just getting people eating, the proper combination of meals at the right times of the day, getting them to move for their body type, making sure they're drinking good quality water, and like detoxing every quarter. And I like people to do like a heavy metal detox, like maybe once or twice a year, like at least once every other year as a very minimum. And to focus on their mindset and to focus on their purpose and to figure out what helps them manage stress, mm-hmm. and to notice what makes them happy. And then there's the whole other side of just like how to use less chemicals, knowing, what they are and what they're in, because we don't know until we know, and it's basically just educating people on all these things need to add up. And then, you will have a better experience with getting pregnant probably, and you will have a better experience with menopause, and you will be able to chase your grandchildren around when you're 65, no problem, and you will be able to travel the world and do hikes and do, and like all these things that we work so hard to retire and do, and then we find we're not in a state where we can really do them. Mm-hmm. I want people to do that and be able to just live and mm-hmm. enjoy it.
Yes. Yeah. And live in a way that, because I think we all, culturally, living to 85 is like, wow, that was a good long life. Right. But like having some sort of meaning behind, the last 30 years or so, and being able to have a life that actually was worth living, and not just, passing each day with quote unquote being alive. There's such a difference. And yeah, there's so much that can be done that, like you just said, it sounds so foundational, helping people just simply manage stress and glucose, right? And making sure that that's not something that isn't supported is a huge indicator as to kind of what things will be like down the road. I mean, I don't know if this was Mark Hyman that necessarily coined it this, but like Alzheimer's and dementia has kind of been coined like type 3 diabetes.
Diabetes, yeah.
And it affects, but people don't realize so many things affect the brain. I mean, just simple inflammation and heavy metals, and again, glucose and insulin, and what leads to atrophy and what leads to memory-based issues. But in my opinion, like there's nothing worse. You get to the end of your life and maybe not only are you not living, but then you lose the memories.
Remembering it.
Yeah, you're losing the memories of when you did live.
And the memories of who your closest people are to you.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be that way. There's the pharmaceutical companies are searching for quote unquote cures. But in my opinion, something like dementia and Alzheimer's is so incredibly preventable.
It's all preventable.
And yes, there's specific genetic mutations that leave you more susceptible to this stuff. Yeah. But like Dr. Cabral says, that just loads the gun. I mean, we can make sure that we take our finger off the trigger and never get to the point of needing to see those things come to fruition.
Yeah. And it's actually quite easy. It doesn't have to be all this biohacking and 1,000 supplements and the best of the best products. We can actually just pare it really back and be quite simple in our lives. Right. Mm-hmm. And building community is a huge part of that as well. Right. Having your like-minded people around you, people that will push you to go further and push you to do well and be happy with your successes. And, I think that's really important to have surrounding you at all times. Like the blue zones, I think that's something that they're all really striving with is community, right? And that connection.
Yes. Yes. And the studies that have come out, right, and show that even people who aren't doing the healthiest things physically for their body, the people who have content hearts and feel, and who have minds that are, positive, they just show that connection is a huge indicator of longevity. And and like you said, having like-minded, supportive people around you then makes you want to do the things that make your body feel good. Like,
and they're all doing it. And you keep up with each other, right?
Exactly.
It's just the way it is. So
yes,
we need it to be just the way it is.
Yep, absolutely. So if you had to kind of, I know obviously you love the podcast, if that's kind of how you got into this whole thing. So podcasts, and you maybe have read The Rain Barrel Effect. Do you have any other podcasts that you love, or books? Maybe they're like an aging focus or this foundational focus. If you were to share with our listeners, like anything specific from a learning material, do you have anything?
Yeah, well, I've definitely read The Rain Book. All of my pages are falling out. They're all highlighted. I actually posted that, and he commented on it saying, I like a well-read book. I need to get a new one. But yeah, I love Dr. Sarah Gottfried, and she has a book called Younger, which is really great. All of her books are great. I like listening to Be Well by Kelly Levesque, is it? Mm-hmm. She has lots of great guests that I learn a lot from on her podcast. Not so much with aging, but a lot with hormones and that type of thing, which are all part of aging, or a component of it. I also like, what's his name? Dr. Frank Lipman.
Yes.
What is that book it's his latest book? Maybe not his latest. He just brought out a sleep one, actually. So the one before that. It's such a simple book for everybody to just start on. He has a really good way of breaking things down just to make everybody be like, I could do that. I could do that. And I think that's great if you're just starting.
Yes. Yeah. The name is escaping me too, but I know it's.
Yeah. Do you know it? It's got a white
yes.
cover. Yeah.
I do.
And who else?
I think that's good. Those are great suggestions.
Yeah, there's a lot. This is like, once you enter this field, what I wasn't really expecting was that you've kind of entered a form of academia. It never stops. Does it stop?
No, it doesn't.
I always feel like there's more. Will I ever know it all?
And that's how, so it's ever changing too, right? There's always new research coming out, which I think is part of why there's always something new to learn. But I think when you're doing something that you love so much, the learning is just like it's what I would be learning anyway. It's what I would be. And I recently interviewed another woman who she does like business energetics, but she's like, I tell my clients who are trying to build their business that you should be doing what you're up at night Googling. What are you researching in your spare time? What drives you when it's your choice to learn about? And so, when you're in a business that you love, it is never stopping because you would be, reading and researching about it anyway.
I know. My husband will often be like, oh, do you just want to watch a movie? And then I'll look at him. He's like, you want to watch a documentary, don't you? I was like, yeah. I'm like, I don't really watch TV, but if I want to watch it, yeah, just like, I want to watch this documentary or that documentary. Yeah, I'm not wasting my time sitting in front of the TV if I'm not going to learn something.
Yeah, I love documentaries too. Yeah, I'm not like into like the fake movies. I'll watch like something that's a true story.
Yes. Yeah.
But if I'm going to watch something, yes, I like documentaries. I like true stories, but if it's not true and I'm not going to even
books. I know people keep telling me, don't you just want to like relax and read? I'm like, no, there's too much learning to I just want to learn. So, and that does light me up. Like I wouldn't say it's relaxing because my brain's on all the time, but it's enjoyable.
Yes. Yeah. So could you share with the listeners where they could, learn more? What's your Instagram and maybe a website, just places that they could find you and learn more?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I am Jess Kirby. Yeah. Jess Kirby _youth.element. That's where you can follow me on Instagram. My website is almost ready to be published. It is jesskirby.com. And where else? That's about it. I'm keeping it simple. I'm not on Facebook. I'm just doing this platform. Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. And sometimes it's, better to have everything concentrated in one place, and that all the people that you're helping are all in that one targeted area.
Well, I think my demographic is more on Instagram than Facebook. And I'm just trying to take Dr. Cabral's advice on not spending hours scrolling, check it in the morning, check it at night, and just be more purposeful with that. And I just think with so many other things going, so many other forms of social media, I'm like, I'm just going to keep it simple with this one.
Yes. That's
less
great.
time online.
Yes. And more time reading.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Thank you again. Thank you so much for being on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. This was a great conversation, and I think our listeners probably came away with really helpful tips as far as, aging is concerned, and even some inspiration listening to your story.
Oh, good. Hey, do you know what? I forgot to tell you, you were my health coach when I got my labs done with Cabral in the beginning. You were my health coach. Yeah. I forgot to tell you that.
And sometimes I remember names. You're welcome. My pleasure. How long ago was that?
That was 2 years ago. That was 2019 when I first got all my labs done. So yeah.
Wow. Good. Yeah. Well, you've come a long way, and
very long way.
Talk all the time about that ripple effect, and us taking, Dr. Cabral inspired me, and so then I was your health coach, but now you've been inspired by your choices, and so you're helping others, and who knows who you'll help that will end up kind of following a similar path. So
we just need it to ripple into the world, don't we?
Yes. Yep. That's what it's all about.
Good.
All right. Thank you so much for being on. We'll hope to talk with you soon.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jess.
Bye.